Are you a little bit concerned that a lot of the evidence suggests that when you try to enforce these ideals, it results in negative outcomes? Do you feel like you're worsening the outcomes for a lot of people for the sake of an aesthetic of traditionalism?
No, it's not about, look, I understand my intro is actually sort of self-referential in this regard, like the 1950s thing. That's sort of a parody insofar as a lot of more progressive types would tend to associate my beliefs with like this, fetishizing of the 1950s. That's not really my belief, so it is sort of a parody.
Wait, your opening wasn't your belief?
I'm not actually.
Are you walking back on your opening, or?
I'm not actually thinking that we're going to go back to the 1950s or something like that. I simply want stable marriages and stable families.
So do
if
I.
you don't mind, I have a couple things I wanted to address here, and then maybe we can get a back and forth going.
Well, hold on. We're still in the back and forth right now.
Okay.
So no, I'm not going to go off that. If you care about stable marriages and stable families, why then are you advocating for the enforcement of these roles, which can be detrimental to stable families?
And again, who is doing the enforcing? I mean, your side controls virtually all of the messaging in this country. Every institution is promoting your message. I am the dissenting voice, which is why it's not actually a fair opinion to say, well, hookup culture might get in people's brains and compel them to make poor decisions, but John Doyle's over here speaking to an audience of a couple hundred people, and he's actually going to be the one controlling the youth.
It's not just you. No, I think that it's not just you. It's like what I said in my beginning, is that it's not enforced by law or even by institutions.
So who's doing the enforcement?
Hold on. It is socially enforced.
By who?
There are all of society in many different ways.
Society.
There are expectations. Hold on, wait. We live in a society, okay? Joker. But yes, there are social expectations. You heard the research I read from Pew Research. There are far more expectations that women adhere to more of these traditional roles, and when men are stay-at-home fathers, for example, that's not seen as acceptable. Why?
I don't think that's absolutely the case. I mean, with your stay-at-home father example, I get that it's a touchy subject, so we will move on from that. But
I'm not a stay-at-home dad, John, if that helps.
Who is enforcing all of these, gender roles? It doesn't happen. I'm young enough, you're young enough to remember having gone through the public education system, having gone through the cycle of programming to which we were exposed. There was never at any point this girls have to be these Handmaid's Tale slaves and they have to stay at home.
You're doing it. You're doing the thing where you straw man and make it seem like nobody's saying you must not cry or you are a little bitch. Nobody's saying this.
It is exactly
Now, first of all, I recognize that you want to keep going back to the stay-at-home dad thing because it probably bothers you that I have a wife and 2 children and I'm living the trad life, you're living the mad life, I get it. But even more so, when I'm talking about these social expectations, they are subtle, John. They're not these in your face telling people that they must agree or must believe this way. They've done studies, for example, where they have asked middle schoolers, draw a picture of a scientist. Virtually everyone in that study draws a picture of a man. There's a reason why these sciences, for example, are perceived as a more masculine career. That is social conditioning, which we can change.
The reason that they draw scientists as a men is something like 90% of scientists are men or something.
Why? Why is that? Thank you for proving my point. Yes.
Because males excel in the higher levels of things like the hard sciences and things like, even as I read in the intro, the ratio's 13-1. Boys that score over 700 on the math section of their SATs compared to women, it's 13-1. That is biological. The same way that women are more likely to pursue things like early education, things like nursing, than are men. That is biological. Also,
I just can't believe you're telling me the decisions people make are just biological, as if it's not a
100%.
super complicated, hold on,
100%.
as if there's not a super complicated and nuanced thing that goes on between, yes, some biology, but also social. We are all a result of our biology interacting with society.
The social construction,
the decisions we made are not just purely biological.
Of the scientist. The scientist can't be found in nature. That is a social construction. The mechanisms in our brain making us want to go towards those things are biological. Those are innate. Also, the quip about you being married and me not, you'll have to refer me to which Norman Rockwell painting depicted you knocking up a woman, walking away, hooking up with another woman, and then going back to her once she was pregnant. I don't think that's very traditional. I will say. That I will tell you.
Now, it's very cute that you have this tabloid understanding of what happened. Maybe if you've been reading up on some celebrity news, but virtually none of that was true, what you just said. But even more so, well, I know, it's easier for you to derail into ad homs when you're obviously getting demonstrated to be completely wrong here. So men going into sciences is largely because it's expected to be a masculine and male career.
Why?
Hold on. Women have made massive contributions to the sciences, even in a time when women were not expected to, or were even actively discouraged from pursuing those things. Now it is more acceptable, but there are still subconscious biases that take place. This is why you can see, how common is it for a little boy to hear, hey, you should go pursue math? hey, you should go do science. You should do these things. It's not that they're going to actively say, you're a girl, you can't do it. It's more so that that might just not be encouraged for them. And if we know that something as subtle as, another study I'll reference real quickly is, we know that something as subtle as just having a picture in the textbook that depicts a masculine or a man as a scientist is less, or it negatively affects women's ability to succeed. There was something that happened in the late 90s called the Scully effect. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but when the X-Files came out, it depicted a female scientist, which wasn't like the first time that happened, but after that, it was called the Scully effect, where a huge increase of girls wanted to be scientists. There is a social component here. It's a lot easier and almost lazier to just say, it's just brains, you know, men are men, women are women, okay? It's a lot more difficult to contend with what we can actually change.
Nobody's denying that men and women are free to pursue the roles as they will, but we know that throughout, 800 BC to 1950 AD, virtually 95% of all technological and scientific innovation came from European men. The idea that that was happening because they were allowed to, and all these women with all these great ideas were just being shut out of the discussion, is just frankly not true. Also, the idea that negative stereotypes are preventing women from going into these fields, we know that's not true as well. There have been several studies proving that if you discourage women, you can't be a scientist, you can't be a doctor. It literally does not affect either their performance nor their interest in those fields. There was a study, though, recently in 2021 that tried to review all of that and say, no, this actually is the case, and then they got caught fabricating their numbers. In terms of the X-Files thing, maybe, but I mean, that's the 1990s. Look, I mean, you're reaching like the peak of when all this messaging, which I can't believe you deny the fact. There are institutions, grants, funding, all of these organizations telling women, you can be a doctor, you can be a scientist. When's the last time you saw a straight white man in a commercial? It doesn't exist. All of the programming in this country
hold on.
is
I recognize that you're trying to go down the special snowflake route here, okay? But before we start playing victim,
he never left 2016.
there are still
That's his problem.
There are still massive amounts of white males on TV, okay? I'm pretty confident about that one. But again, even if these institutions are trying to push forward an idea that women can do it, you're ignoring the social component. There is, in fact, different social expectations and stigmas. And I keep going back to the stay-at-home dad thing because you're talking out of two sides of your mouth. You're saying there's not really much of a social stigma, but then you're perpetuating the social stigma. You're trying to discourage women from pursuing these career fields. And I don't know why that is. Women are not a slave to their biology.
First of all, on the stay-at-home dads thing, I have no ill will or disrespect towards dads who are staying at home. What I am discouraging is the idea that these roles are malleable and it's a simple coin toss. I am saying that men and women flourish best when they are following their roles, when they are pursuing what is complementary to them in their nature.
What are their roles? That changes. What a role is, what a role is for a man has changed significantly.
And you say that, but that's not actually true. It may have changed in terms of things like attire, aesthetics, penis size, but what doesn't change is the fundamental role of the man as the protector and the provider. Even in the societies where men are spending the most time with children, the nurturers, I believe it's like the Aka pygmies in Africa, even then, the males are only spending about 40 minutes a day with the child, and the women are still spending 10 times amount that time. So you can say that, oh, the differences are malleable. The big differences are not. I don't really care what some guy's hairstyle was or what his statue was looking like. The biological reality of our situation, as articulated, has remained the same, and it's only changing, not in that all of a sudden women are becoming men and things like that. It's just that now they're not attracted to each other and they're not getting married because of that actual social pressure and actual social conditioning, which you seem to want to ignore.
No, there's a reason why people are getting married later. Again, it can largely be attributed to economic reasons. We can't just point to a problem and just blame whatever we want to blame. It's largely because of economic reasons as to why people are getting married later in life. And again, I am not denying biology. You keep going back to this. However, you're really going to tell me that there was a time when it was masculine to cry. There was a time when what it meant to be a man, how you were expected to behave, was different. Just if there are some similarities as far as the protective nature, I'm fine with that. Again, a lot of that can be attributed to, yes, biology, testosterone. If you are stronger and by protecting your family, you need to be physically able to fight someone off, yeah, the male's probably going to be the protector. No shit. However, That's one, not necessarily the case nowadays. And two, we would then want to talk about what does it even mean to be the protector? There are different ways to protect a family. Not all of it is physical protection. And so what it means to be a man, how men are expected to behave, has changed. It's different. Nowadays, boys are not encouraged to show emotion. It's considered very weak, it's considered feminine, it's considered girly, but yet I point to the example of, yes, where it used to be chivalrous for men to weep. It was called chivalrous weeping. And that was a thing. That was a masculine trait. So there can be biological consistencies across human history. I'm fine with that. I'm more interested in talking about what we can change. What can we do to make society better? And by acknowledging that there are certain social expectations that we place on people, we expect them to act a certain way. If we can acknowledge that, that means we can also change these things. We can make it so that families are more stable. We can make it so that if a man unfortunately loses his job, he's not more likely to get divorced because his self-esteem is suddenly in the toilet. We can make these changes. We can make the world a better place.
Oh, well, I like that. We can all go home on a good note, can't we? In terms of the emotional aspect of it, I have never heard nor witnessed anybody see a man crying at his father's funeral or at the birth of his child and being like, man up, pussy. That's like this sort of like...
You keep doing it. No one says that men shouldn't cry at their father's funeral, dude.
No, but what they do say,
life,
it is
men
true.
want to express emotion by crying.
If a man is crying at like the ceremony you mentioned, the chivalrous ceremony, no one is going to turn an eye to that then. The same way as something I guess would be the equivalent now. No one would turn an eye to that negatively. The same way now, if you have men crying over things like, I'm like really nervous about this test. Or back then like, I don't want to do jousting practice. Like, yeah, okay, quit being a little bitch. Like there's a reason that stoicism is a virtue. As a man, you have to be stoic because like we mentioned in the baby studies, when something goes down, maybe it's changed and oh, maybe you have a gun, maybe, you know, police are there, I don't know, it depends on what city. People look to you for the answer. People look to you for protection. The little baby girls look to the little baby boys more often than vice versa. That's why stoicism is a virtue as a man. Being in control of your emotions to portray strength, even if you are weak. No one's saying that weakness is a problem, but you have an obligation to those around you as a man to portray strength, even if that's not the case.
This is just wrong. You're doing it right now.
Also,
this idea that because you're a man, you have a responsibility to portray strength all the time.
That is true.
No, that is not true. And you're once again enforcing this idea. This is what leads to the repressing emotions, the repressing mechanism, which has already been demonstrated to increase likelihood of committing suicide.
Okay, that's not true. The reason men are killing themselves isn't because they can't talk about their emotions. Let's dispel with this fiction that that's the reason that that's going on. Men are killing themselves because we see no way forward. It is harder for us to achieve the economic prospects that our fathers or that our grandmothers have, which Hunter is right. It is because of things like offshoring manufacturing, frankly, gender bias in terms of higher education, things like that. Men just don't see the prospects. And if men don't see a way out of a situation, we are more likely to be despondent. We are more likely to kill ourselves. Also, what's very important about that in terms of the male suicide and how that relates to emotion, like we mentioned earlier, when men were held to the highest standards of how they were supposed to behave as men in the 1950s, they weren't killing themselves as often. They weren't as depressed as often. This is like a new invention for whatever reason.
Because a lot of the problems here is that some of these expectations are being almost accentuated. So we have social media, which is isolating people. We still have social expectations that you as a man have a responsibility to give off the impression that you're strong at all times. These things all compounded, yes, the economy, all of these issues compounded lead to more negative outcomes, specifically for men. Okay. Even more so, hold on, they've done studies where they've literally shown that men are less likely to go to the fucking doctor because they perceive that as being weak. These are the type of ideas.
That is... I'll walk it off. That's funny.
You can't always walk... Some of it you can walk off, but not always.
That's funny. One thing I want to get into, and I think this is an interesting phenomenon that we've witnessed often. Well, so that too, I mean, that is men. I don't think it's necessarily weakness. You know, I'm sure the men in the audience, it's not necessarily weakness like, oh, the doctor's going to think I'm. It's more just like, like, who cares? Who cares? I think that women tend to be more sort of on the ball with those things, which is good.
Well,
they're
why do men
nurturing. They're
die more?
empathetic. They're like,
Men
you're
die
hurt.
earlier.
You don't even know it. I'm going to tell you that. And the men are like, nah, I'm not hurt. And then it is the case. But here's something interesting.
Men die earlier, John.
I think that anybody, well, it's because we're taking more risks because of our testosterone. By the way, testosterone isn't just I'm doing manual labor. It's your risk aversion. It's your ambition. It's your competition levels. It's everything. And women have less than that, and that's why they are the way that they are, which is lovely, by the way. We love women, don't we, folks? Everyone loves women. No one loves them more than me. That is a fact. But something I did want to get into, this is a very interesting social phenomenon that we're seeing, where I think, even if Hunter may disagree, I don't think he does, there is a monopoly.
Time's up.
Can I continue with my 5 minutes?
Well, you have 5 minutes next, so you can continue then, yes. We're starting the second
that's
segment.
not fair at all.
We're so back.
We have-
Trust the plan.
I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start crying right here, right now.
Well,
And I will embrace you. I will understand this is very traumatic for you.